Welcome back to the kitchen, everybody. This is your boy, the Mad Chef, and this is yet again another installment of our quickly growing new segment on the channel called Dessert Challenges, where I take on my greatest enemy in the kitchen, desserts. And the past couple of videos I'm pretty proud of. We've done some donut shop favorites, some of my favorite items to get. I've been kind of going through a lot of fried foods here lately on the channel, so the last thing I want to do is a fried dessert on top of all of that. But when we're talking about sweets and the stuff that really speaks to my soul and sweet tooth, before I grab a candy bar or an ice cream or anything like that, I automatically just want to go and get baked sweets. And I'm not talking about Little Debbie or Mrs. Freshly or anything like that. I'm talking about real bakery style desserts, the cheesecakes, the brownies, the giant cookies, the honey buns, the cinnamon rolls. You guys know what I'm talking about. So tonight, we're going to be trying our hand at making giant homemade cinnamon rolls. So buckle up and let's get started. Okay, before we can start discussing our dry ingredients, we need to get this step out of the way first. Alright, so in a medium sauce pot over medium-high heat, we're going to be warming up 1 cup of milk. The type of milk really doesn't matter here. And we're going to add to it 1 stick of unsalted butter that I have cubed, and it's been sitting out at room temperature for a little while now. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to melt this butter in the milk, and we're going to use that to enrich our dough. My hope is that since this butter's been sitting out for a little while, that it will melt down completely into the milk before it reaches a boil. We do not want this milk exceeding a maximum temperature of 115 degrees. Since we're not sure how this is really going to end up at the moment, I would definitely keep a couple of tablespoons of plain yogurt or heavy cream to the side to help bring down some of that temp. Because if this milk exceeds that maximum threshold of 115, we can't add it to our dry ingredients without killing our yeast. So it's been about 4 minutes and I'm taking a look and we have not yet reached a boil, but all of our milk solids have melted in. All right, so at this point, I want to take some time out to insert a clean and sanitized candy/deep fry thermometer that I typically use for deep frying. The reason for this being that my red probe thermometer also died about a week ago. It sure seems like once my ankle decided to stop working, a lot of my kitchen gear did. First it was the deep fryer, now it's the probe. I really didn't set out to be so much of a trendsetter. That being said, our milk is at a temp of 120, which isn't terrible. So we're going to set that to the side, and by the time all of our dry ingredients are ready, this milk should be right at the temp that we need to, so we didn't need any of that cream or yogurt. Alright, and it's finally time to start dishing out on our dry ingredients for our cinnamon rolls. We're going to be making this dough in our KitchenAid mixer. We're going to be showing it a lot of love today because I honestly haven't used it in about 5 months. You can make this by hand, but that is going to be sheer torture. In this bowl is 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and to that we're going to be adding a half a cup of granulated sugar. Then we're going to wake up all the flavors of our dough with 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, and then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder because I did not have any baking soda. So if you have baking soda, that'll be a half a teaspoon. Guys, I am super late to the party on this, but this is my secret weapon, Fleischmann's bread machine jarred yeast. This is no different than active dry or rapid rise yeast you get in the packets, but this will save you so much money if you make your own doughs or breads. So we're going to be adding about 3¼ teaspoons or equivalent to about 10 grams of dry yeast, and we're going to give that a nice assertive whisk until all of our dry ingredients are well incorporated. Alright, so we have finally arrived at our KitchenAid machine with the dough hook attached, and we're going to add our 115 degree milk and butter mixture a little bit at a time. I'm honestly shooting for about half of our milk and butter to go in. I didn't quite get there, but it was kind of close. All right, so we're going to lock down the top, and we're going to start stirring it very slowly just to combine all of our ingredients to start the hydration process, making sure that we kind of push down any dry ingredients that kind of rise up on the side to make sure that every bit gets some of that nice moisture. And once all these ingredients are well combined, I'm turning this thing off, and I'm going to add the rest of our warm butter and milk to it. All right, now that we're getting the rest of that milk mixture in there, we're going to put the hook back down, and we're going to start mixing it on a low speed for about 2 minutes. I set it to number 2, and that worked pretty good. The total time it takes to make this dough is probably going to last about 10 minutes. Let's make sure we keep pushing that dough down. And once that 2 minutes is over with, I want to turn off the mixer and I want to start pushing down some of that dough that rose up off the side. So that way all this dough gets evenly hydrated and it becomes one cohesive mass. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to put that mixer back on a medium speed. I'm going to go with number 4 because number 6 started spitting stuff out and we do not want to lose any of our dough. We're going to do this for about 4 minutes. And once 4 minutes is up, we're going to increase the speed again to a higher speed. Number 8 was a little too rough and started spitting stuff out of the bowl. Guys, we cannot leave our KitchenAid mixers unattended. These things are as unstable as my ex-wife. These things are known for violently trimming themselves out of balance, and they will completely wreck your kitchen, just like she wrecked my last home. So please, guys, pay attention to what you're doing. Also, an over-aggressive mix time on this is going to make our dough tough, and we do not want that. So I will see you all again at the end of 4 minutes. Alright, so at the end of all of this, we should have a very loosely defined dough ball. Kind of shaggy, but still very sticky and tacky, but not unworkable. So we're going to put this right back into the bowl and carry this over to the counter so we can start kneading it. Alright, now that we've got our work surface and our hands appropriately floured, let's roll this dough out on the cutting board. And we're not going to be doing but so much to it. Again, we don't want this to be tough. You know, a few slap and folds. We're just basically trying to make a tight and smooth ball of dough, making sure everything is incorporated and there's no open seams. Alright, so once our ball of dough looks like this, and you can pull the dough without it breaking or ripping off or becoming too thin, we're going to place it into this bowl that I've greased with just some butter. And we're going to press that down into the buttered bottom side of this, so that way it seeps into our dough. And we're going to let it proof, covered with a wet towel for about an hour and a half. Okay, so the greatest source of debate of any incredible cinnamon roll is going to lie within how you execute that cinnamon sugar filling. Now, I've seen this done numerous ways, and you guys do not have to follow the method that I'm going to use. Do whatever speaks to your soul and makes you happy or enjoy. But after countless hours of research before developing this recipe, it has come to my attention that, in my opinion, the best cinnamon rolls are made with some sort of creamy cinnamon sugar butter. So we're going to be making a whipped cinnamon sugar butter. So we're going to make this in that KitchenAid over there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to be giving her a lot of love today since I haven't used her in about 5 months, and I definitely don't want her to feel lonely and leave. So with that being said, let's get started. So we're back again at our freshly cleaned KitchenAid mixer, and for this part of the recipe, you're going to want to use the paddle attachment. So let's go ahead and get the ingredients in here. This is 1 stick of unsalted butter. Now guys, ideally for this part, you're probably going to want to use salted butter, but I never really carry that sort of thing. So we're going to hit it up with a ½ teaspoon of kosher salt. Like I said in the previous couple videos, it is a pro baker and dessert chef move to add a little bit of salt to the components of your dessert ingredients just to bring out the flavors. So now we're going to drop down our attachment, lock it, and we're just going to stir this up for a couple minutes to make sure that our butter spreads the entire bottom of the bowl. You got to use some room temperature butter for this because cold butter doesn't spread. I've had this butter out since before I even started filming this video, and it was still a little tough, so I nuked it in the microwave for about 40 seconds. We're at a really good point here, so we're going to go ahead and start adding in our dry ingredients. Now this is 3/4 cup of dark brown sugar. Most recipes call for light. I don't really have any light on hand, so any sort of brown sugar will work. Make sure you pack that 3/4 cup out. You want to get it as tight as you possibly can to maximize your experience here. Alright, so now that we've got that incorporating, we're going to add to it 2½ tablespoons of ground cinnamon, and that goes right in. Easy peasy. I've seen other people use different kinds of pie spices and such to make this recipe. We're just going with the classic comfort OG cinnamon roll. So we're going to let this stir on, we're going to let this mix up on a low setting. I've got it to number 2. We're going to do that for about the first 2 minutes. And then we're going to bump it up to a medium sort of speed. This is going to take about 8 to 10 minutes. I don't know how good you guys can see this, but that's what your creamy brown sugar cinnamon mixture should look like. There's some darker edges around the corner that I'm going to fold in. This is almost like a cinnamon buttercream, So what I'm going to do is I want to transfer this out of the KitchenAid stand bowl into another container. We have about 46 minutes left on the rising time for our cinnamon rolls, so I will see you again then when it's time to roll them out and make them. All right, now it's time to start rolling out the dough, but before we do, we're going to take a look at what our dough looks like after an hour and a half. It's roughly about 1.5 times the size that it was, which is normal for this type of dough. Now, unlike other baking occasions, we are really going to need to liberally flour down our work surface here. The reason for that being is we've really got to roll that dough out a pretty good distance. Also, don't forget to dust your rolling pin as well as your hands. So that being said, let's get down to it. All right, so now it's time to plop this thing out on the cutting board and lightly flour the surface so that way we reduce any friction while we're rolling it out. And when I say we really need to roll this thing out, I mean it needs to span the entire width of this cutting board. You don't want any less than 24 inches wide, and you also want it to cover most of the length of it going down. Don't worry if your rectangle shape isn't exactly a perfect rectangle. This is honestly my first attempt, so it's not perfect. What you're shooting for is about 1/4 inch thick piece of dough, pretty much on all sides. And guys, please don't sweat it if your rectangle dough isn't exactly a rectangle. We're going to be working out some of those sides with both our fingers and our rolling pin, trying to define a more square sort of border. And also a pro tip, don't forget to put additional flour underneath the sides and top and bottom of your dough to prevent it from sticking to the board when we're rolling it. So all we're doing now is spreading our lovely brown sugar cinnamon mixture as evenly as possible across the interior of our dough, making sure we go from corner to corner, touching each border so that way we have an even layer of filling inside of it. And after that, we got to start rolling this thing up. I'm the baker, so I get to lick the spoon. You can't though. All right, now I'm redusting my hands with flour. We're going to turn that dough around to where the wet side is facing me, and we're going to work this thing from side to side, kind of like a typewriter, trying to very tightly and firmly grip our dough as we're rolling it up into one giant log. Now, at this point in time, I'm just trying to make sure all of our seams are intact so nothing leaks out. There was an uneven amount of cinnamon throughout this log, so as I am rolling this through into a thinner log, I'm also pressing and squeezing and working down the entire length of this log to ensure maximum even distribution of cinnamon sugar. All right, so this next step is super important. What you're going to need is a nice serrated knife, and what we're going to do is try to make a score mark dead center. Now, if you have a ruler, I would definitely suggest you use that. And from here, we are going to be making score marks every 2 inches from the center in each direction as kind of a guide for us to follow when we start cutting our cinnamon rolls. All right, so this next step is really critical. You're going to need a bowl of warm water to dip your serrated knife in, and what that's going to do is provide you with really clean cuts while you're making these cinnamon rolls. If you don't do this, you run the risk of ripping or pulling up your dough while you're cutting them out. All right, so what I'm doing now is basically just cutting the ends off of this roll. These guys got a little less filling than the rest and weren't quite as big. We're not throwing those away because they're going to be snacks for the chef much later on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut up the rest of our cinnamon rolls. I did have to remeasure some of my score marks because they weren't exactly 2 inches. Guys, these wouldn't be legitimate dessert challenges if everything came out perfect every time. This whole segment is about progress, about me overcoming and creating desserts. So you're actually seeing my progress in the making. Outside of the Boston cream donuts, each of these desserts that I've made afterward were literally recorded on my first try. So perfection isn't always going to be achieved, but you know, you're seeing my progress, and hopefully along the way I can teach you guys something you didn't know. All right, and all that's left to do from here is to put all of our beautiful cinnamon rolls onto a baking dish. I do have to find a small baking dish for the Cinnamonis or the chef snacks. And then we're going to put a towel over both of these dishes and let them proof for an additional 45 minutes. All right, so there's going to be a bit of a conflict for some of you guys when it comes to what happens after this rises. Now, ideally, and if you have the time, I would highly recommend this. After this 45 minutes, all you got to do is put it in the fridge, preferably overnight. Now, I do have company coming tomorrow, so if those of you that are asking, can you bake these right away after 45 minutes, the answer is yes. But I would very strongly disagree with that Because what will happen 9 times out of 10 is if you go straight from freshly proofed to the oven, you're going to lose a lot of that ooey gooey cinnamon center. So what I'm going to do, since these need to be done today, is I'm going to put them in the fridge for 4 hours after I get done proofing these. That way the rolls have some time to solidify and firm up in the fridge, and then we're going to cook them after that. Alright, it's been 4 hours and we just pulled our freshly made cinnamon rolls right out of the fridge. I'm going to give you a quick shot of what that looks like. Now, don't be alarmed if they don't, expand very much. They're not going to really rise like any other sort of yeasted dough. All right, so this next step is optional, but I do believe this is a secret that Cinnabon does with their cinnamon rolls. And guys, the whole purpose of making, cinnamon rolls from scratch is because when you're entertaining guests and stuff like that, and you have them try these really fresh homemade cinnamon rolls, you don't want them going back to Cinnabon the next day because, they want them again. You want to be the Cinnabon they come back to, unless you're busy, and then they can go to Cinnabon because that's what Cinnabon's for, is whenever you're busy. But either way, all right, so this next step is going to keep the insides of our cinnamon rolls nice and fluffy and pillowy. Now, this is a trade cinnamon roll secret that was leaked by, someone from Cinnabon, I do believe, on social media. So you got a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. And you're just going to pour your heavy whipping cream over all your little cinnamon rolls. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the inside soft and pillowy and moist. I don't know if you guys have ever had a cinnamon roll and you tear it apart and look on the inside and you almost have kind of like a cinnamon cream in the middle with a little bit of a glistening to it. Well, that's from that heavy cream that's being placed in the center of it. It's going to kind of make like a extra gooey cinnamon center. All right, so all that's left to do now is toss it in the oven on 375 for about 25 minutes. We're going to check it because I don't want these to be like super, super soft. I do want to see like some browning and some crispening on the outside edges of these. And while we're doing that, we're going to talk about our cream cheese icing. Okay, so we're going to be doing 2 different sets of icings for these cinnamon rolls. Why 2, you ask? Because there are some people in this universe that do not enjoy the finer things in life, such as cream cheese icing. I do have 2 such guests coming over to the house tomorrow that absolutely do not partake in these things. So we do have to cater to them, but in our own love language, as respectfully as possible, we must tell them that they are wrong. All right, so we've already covered the vanilla icing that we're going to put on the other half in my apple fritter video from the last dessert challenge. So we're going to be using the exact same powdered sugar, vanilla, milk combination, so we're not going over that again. In the exact same quantities. If you guys did not check out my video on apple fritters, I will have a link in the description and a card floating around here somewhere. So we're going to be making our cream cheese icing inside the bowl of our stand mixer. Again, we're giving that KitchenAid all the love today. I'm getting everyone's money worth out of that thing, including yours, even though you really didn't help me pay for it. All right, so let's get to the blender. And in the bowl of our, once again, freshly cleaned KitchenAid mixer, we're going to add an entire 8-ounce block of full-fat cream cheese. Keep in mind, you're going to want to use room temperature cream cheese because if you do it straight from the fridge, it is not going to mix. It's very similar to butter. All right, now that I've got our bowl strapped in, we're going to go ahead and start mixing this together on a low speed. Again, kind of like what we did with the butter earlier in the cinnamon rolls. We're just trying to get it to spread out a little in the bottom of this bowl. As you can see, I'm using my whisk attachment. And what this is I'm slowly adding 1 1/4 cups of powdered sugar, or as the lovely people in the UK say, icing sugar. Little bits at a time to our cream cheese. We're going to let that get acquainted real quick. And then to this, we're going to add 2½ teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now that we've got this going, we're going to put it on a medium speed. And we're going to add in the rest of our powdered sugar. And we're just going to let this cream off for probably about the next 4 to 5 minutes. We're just waiting for all those ingredients to get combined and look good. All right, and how long you actually end up whipping this icing right here is based on pretty much personal preference. What color do you like your cream cheese icing to be? The longer you beat this icing, the whiter it gets. So if you like that little off cream white color, then you're going to want to beat it a little bit less. If you want a thick white cream cheese icing, you might want to go for another extra, 1 or 2 minutes. Everything is starting to look really good in here. So I'm probably going to pull this after another 2 minutes, and I will see you guys when it's time to check on our cinnamon rolls and frost them. Alright, so it's been 35 minutes for these guys. I did check them at 25. Now, they were technically done then, but they were just a little too pale for me. I like to see some caramelized corners, some browning. They were done. They just were just a little too pale. Don't worry about the caramelized cream here in the middle. We're going to move these from the baking tray to a cutting board for frosting. And these little cinnamonis, really, they're not that mini anymore. These took about 30. And what you're not seeing here is much of any significant cinnamon sugar loss. And that's why it's so imperative to refrigerate these for at least a few hours, if not overnight. And this did pass the multiple, touch test. I was testing the sides to making sure that they were actually crispy and a little caramelized without sacrificing that gooey center. So these are exactly what I expect. A nice tender crunch or chew on the outside and a nice ooey gooey center. So in 15 minutes, we're going to start frosting these guys. Then we're going to try them. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. These things smell amazing. I did have a couple that started to fall apart, but ultimately that cream that was on the bottom, that caramelized cream, kind of created a bottom glaze for some of these cinnamon rolls, and they look incredible. So I've got 2 cutting boards to make sure that the non-cream cheese crowd does not get the cream cheese icing. And we're just going to slather this icing on top of all of our little cinnamon rolls here. This is the cream cheese icing. All right, so we're going to do something different with these. We're just going to take the tops and dunk them in just like this, so you get that classic iced honey bun look. And then we're just going to spoon this icing all over the top of these cinnamon rolls. Make sure they have a nice thick coating. All right, so we're going to send the first cinnamony off to the missus to see what she thinks. Cinnamony 1 coming into the missus. We're going to get her reaction for this. She's contemplating. Oh, it's good?
That's amazing.
All right, y'all heard it first from her. So let's try another little one. And then we'll tear apart a big one just so you guys can see the inside of it. Thumbs up. Before you guys go to Walmart or Food Lion or whatever local supermarket you go to and buy those fresh baked, Walmart bakery, Food Lion bakery, cinnamon rolls. Guys, those were never really baked fresh. As a former Walmart employee spilling the beans, they all come par baked. All they do is finish it up the rest of the way and frost it. Sorry, not sorry. For the same amount of money, or, maybe a little bit more, you can make quality cinnamon rolls at home for really relatively inexpensive. None of the items that were used today to make either one of these frostings and these cinnamon rolls are very expensive at all. And most of these ingredients you probably already have in your cupboard. So you're welcome. And it's definitely better than those Pillsbury Grand cinnamon rolls. They never taste like a true cinnamon roll. They almost, to me, I don't know about anybody else, they always taste overcooked no matter how long you cook them. Alright. So I'm just going to cut this in half since it's so big, so you guys can see the inner layers. We've retained a nice moist inside, and look at all of that cinnamon, brown sugar, butter that's on the middle. See how soft that is? Until next time, this is your boy Mark, the Mad Chef, and I'll see you in the next video. And try these. It does take about all day if you do it the way I did. I literally started this project around 1 p.m., 1:30 p.m., and it is currently a little after 10 o'clock at night. That gives you the total time span. But honestly, guys, it is so worth it, and I cannot wait to see the looks on the faces of my company tomorrow when they get here. They're going to be floored by this. So whether you're making a holiday breakfast, Christmas breakfast, or surprising people at the office, or elevating your coffee break, you can do this at home by simply making these, and you'll be the most popular person on your block if you do. All right, until next time, this is the Mad Chef. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.